Melissa Ann Carter was 22 years old when she vanished into the Mojave Desert near Joshua Tree National Park in the spring of 2007. A recent college graduate from Arizona State University with a degree in marketing, she worked as a junior account coordinator at a Phoenix advertising agency while planning to move to Los Angeles within the year. Friends described her as outgoing, social, and enthusiastic about new experiences, though she had virtually no wilderness or camping experience beyond attending music festivals. She had never been backpacking, had never hiked anywhere without clearly marked trails and visitor centers, and had expressed mild anxiety about being in remote areas without cell service. Her social media presence showed a young woman focused on urban life, nightlife, fashion, and career advancement, posting photos from clubs and restaurants with only occasional scenic day trips to tourist-friendly locations. Melissa stood 5 feet 5 inches tall, weighed approximately 115 pounds, and had shoulder-length brown hair with blonde highlights and green eyes. She shared an apartment in Scottsdale with 2 roommates, maintained a close relationship with her mother in Tucson, and had recently started dating a personal trainer named Kyle Morrison. Those who knew her said she seemed excited about her future and was planning a career move to a larger market. On March 22, 2007, at 9:45 a.m., Melissa Carter drove her 2005 Honda Accord into the parking area at Barker Dam Trail in Joshua Tree National Park. A visitor log at the Trailhead Information Board shows she signed in at 10 a.m., noting she planned a short day hike and would return by early afternoon. The weather forecast predicted clear skies with afternoon temperatures reaching 72 degrees, mild conditions ideal for inexperienced hikers. Melissa carried a small day pack containing 2 bottles of water, granola bars, sunscreen, her digital camera, her cell phone, and a trail map she had picked up at the entrance station. She wore a white tank top, denim shorts, and pink running shoes that were designed for pavement, not rough terrain. Her emergency contact was listed on the visitor log as her mother, Patricia Carter, with a Tucson phone number. At 11:15 a.m. on March 22nd, Melissa sent a text message to Kyle from near Barker Dam. The message read, "This place is amazing. Taking so many photos. See you tonight." Kyle responded immediately with encouragement, and his reply showed as delivered. Cell phone records later confirmed this was Melissa's final outgoing communication. A family from San Diego, the Rodriguez family, reported seeing Melissa near Barker Dam at approximately 11:45 a.m. that same morning. They described her as cheerful, taking photographs of the Joshua trees and rock formations, and she asked them to take a photo of her in front of the dam. Mr. Rodriguez took several photos with her camera, and they chatted briefly about the unusual landscape. The Rodriguez family was the last confirmed witness to see Melissa Carter before she disappeared. By March 23, 2007, when Melissa failed to return to Phoenix and missed work without calling in, her roommate Amanda Phillips tried calling her repeatedly throughout the day. All calls went straight to voicemail, which was unusual since Melissa typically kept her phone charged and responded quickly to messages. By 6:00 p.m., after Melissa missed a scheduled date with Kyle, and still hadn't responded to dozens of calls and texts, Amanda contacted Patricia Carter in Tucson. Patricia immediately called the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department at 7:30 p.m., reporting her daughter missing. The Sheriff's Department contacted Joshua Tree National Park rangers, who checked the visitor log and confirmed Melissa had signed in on March 22nd but had not signed out. A missing persons report was filed at 9:00 p.m. on March 23rd. Kyle Morrison drove to Joshua Tree that night, arriving at 11:30 p.m., and found Melissa's Honda Accord still parked at the Barker Dam trailhead, exactly where she had left it 36 hours earlier. Search and rescue operations began at first light on March 24th. San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department coordinated with Joshua Tree National Park rangers, deploying 2 K9 units and 43 volunteer searchers. The search grid initially covered a 5-square-mile area surrounding the Barker Dam Trail, which was only a 1.3-mile loop considered one of the park's easiest hikes. K9 teams detected Melissa's scent along the main trail and around Barker Dam itself, confirming she had walked the loop as intended. However, the scent trail continued past the dam in a direction away from the parking area, heading into more remote terrain. The K9s tracked her scent for approximately 1.8 miles into an area of boulder formations and dense Joshua tree clusters, before losing the trail completely in a rocky wash. Helicopter surveys on March 25th and 26th revealed no visual evidence of a hiker in distress, no brightly colored clothing visible among the rocks and vegetation. Ground teams searched every accessible area within 3 miles of where the scent trail ended, finding no signs of Melissa. On March 27th, searchers conducted a thorough examination of Melissa's vehicle. The Honda was locked, with her purse containing her wallet, $270 in cash, credit cards, and driver's license visible on the passenger seat. A travel bag in the trunk held a change of clothes and toiletries, suggesting she had planned only a day trip before returning to Phoenix. Her apartment keys were in the ignition. Nothing suggested Melissa had returned to her vehicle after beginning her hike. The search expanded on March 28th to include adjacent wilderness areas and the network of dirt roads surrounding the park. FBI agents joined the investigation on March 30th, conducting interviews with park visitors and examining Melissa's phone records, email accounts, bank statements, and social media activity. Her checking account showed no activity after March 24th. No charges appeared on her credit cards after March 24th. Her social media accounts went silent after a post on March 21st expressing excitement about her Joshua Tree day trip. By April 4th, after 13 days of intensive searching, the operation scaled back to periodic aerial sweeps and volunteer ground searches on weekends. Sheriff's Department spokesperson Lieutenant Maria Gonzalez told reporters that ground teams had covered over 75 square miles of desert terrain. Gonzalez stated, "We've searched every probable location multiple times. The terrain is challenging with countless places where someone could become hidden. But we've found no trace of Ms. Carter beyond that initial scent trail." The active search officially suspended on April 12, 2007. Patricia Carter appeared at a press conference on April 18th, pleading for any information about her daughter. Patricia's statement, delivered with visible anguish, included the words, "Melissa is my only child. She's not experienced in the wilderness. She wouldn't have wandered off the trail intentionally. Someone must have seen something. Please help me find my baby." Local news coverage gradually diminished through April and May. On July 15, 2007, the San Bernardino County Medical Examiner's Office issued a presumed death certificate for Melissa Ann Carter. State law required substantial evidence that death had occurred, and the combination of the exhaustive search, complete absence of contact, extreme desert heat during the initial days after her disappearance, and Melissa's lack of wilderness survival skills met the legal threshold. Kyle Morrison later described receiving notification of the presumed death declaration as surreal and devastating, like the final door closing on any hope. A memorial service was held in Tucson on July 28, 2007. Approximately 250 people attended, including Melissa's college friends, work colleagues, and family members. Kyle gave a eulogy describing Melissa as full of life and plans, taken too soon. A life insurance policy through her employer paid out in September 2007. Patricia Carter established a small memorial scholarship at Arizona State University for marketing students in Melissa's name. Melissa's apartment was cleared out. Her belongings were packed and moved to Patricia's home in Tucson. By fall 2007, the case appeared in regional cold case databases, and Patricia maintained a website sharing updates and keeping Melissa's name visible. On June 14, 2014 at 4:30 p.m., a social worker named Jennifer Walsh encountered something impossible at a rural general store in Lancaster, California, approximately 110 miles from Joshua Tree National Park. The location was in high desert country, an agricultural area known for its small Amish and Mennonite communities that had settled there in the 1980s. Walsh was conducting routine welfare checks on families in the area when she stopped at Miller's General Store for directions. A young woman was standing near the store entrance wearing plain Mennonite-style clothing, a long dark blue dress, a white head covering, and simple black shoes. The woman's appearance was unusual even for the area's conservative religious communities. Her skin was deeply weathered and sun-damaged beyond what would be expected for someone in her 20s or 30s. Her hands showed extensive scarring and calluses suggesting years of manual labor. Most strikingly, she appeared malnourished and moved with an uncertain, shuffling gait, as if unfamiliar with being in public spaces. Walsh approached the woman to ask if she needed assistance. The woman flinched away, then spoke in a hoarse, barely audible voice. She said, "I need help. I don't know where I am. My name is Melissa Carter and I'm from Phoenix." Walsh later told investigators, "The way she said it, like she was trying to remember something from a dream, immediately concerned me. She looked terrified and confused." Walsh asked the woman how she had arrived at the store and if she needed medical attention. The woman stared at her for a long moment before whispering, "I walked. I was told I could leave today. The elder said my time of service was complete." Walsh immediately called the Lancaster Sheriff's Department while keeping the woman in sight. The woman sat on a bench outside the store, rocking slightly and touching the fabric of her dress repeatedly, as if unable to believe it was real. She kept repeating fragments. "The community needed me. I served faithfully. The elder said I could go home now." Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies arrived at the general store at 5:15 p.m., along with an ambulance from Antelope Valley Hospital. Paramedics found the woman sitting on the bench, wrapped in a blanket Jennifer Walsh had provided, still rocking and muttering. Initial vital signs showed a pulse of 96 beats per minute, blood pressure of 88/54, and a body temperature of 97.2 degrees Fahrenheit. She weighed approximately 91 pounds. Paramedics noted severe malnutrition, signs of chronic dehydration, and what appeared to be both fresh and healed injuries covering her exposed skin. Her hands showed multiple poorly healed fractures and extensive callousing suggesting years of intensive manual labor. Her feet, visible when paramedics removed her shoes, showed severe deformities and calluses consistent with prolonged barefoot walking, though she was currently wearing simple leather shoes. Scars marked both forearms in patterns that appeared deliberate rather than accidental. During the 40-minute transport to Antelope Valley Hospital, the woman remained largely unresponsive to questions beyond repeating her name and hometown. Paramedic Stephen Rodriguez documented her saying, "The elder taught us the true path, and we lived according to God's plan, and Sister Ruth is gone now. She couldn't be saved." At 6:10 p.m., the woman was admitted to the emergency department under the designation Jane Doe Possible Cult Victim. Dr. Robert Chen led the medical team conducting the preliminary examination. Blood work revealed severe vitamin D deficiency, despite living in a sunny climate, severe anemia with hemoglobin at 7.4 grams per deciliter, and multiple nutritional deficiencies consistent with years of an extremely restricted diet. X-rays showed evidence of 4 healed rib fractures of varying ages, a healed fracture of the left wrist that had set improperly, multiple healed fractures in both hands, and significant bone density loss. Dental examination revealed 6 missing teeth with healed empty sockets, severe decay in remaining teeth, and evidence of years without proper oral hygiene. A full-body examination documented 58 distinct scars, including what appeared to be deliberate burn marks arranged in circular patterns on her upper arms. Her back showed evidence of scarring consistent with being struck with an object, possibly a strap or switch. Her fingernails were broken and damaged, with scarring on fingertips suggesting repeated trauma. Toxicology screens came back negative for drugs and alcohol, but showed elevated cortisol levels consistent with extreme prolonged stress. Dr. Chen's preliminary report noted, "Patient presents with physical evidence consistent with approximately 7 years of severe deprivation, manual labor, and systematic abuse. Psychological state suggests profound dissociation and trauma bonding, consistent with captivity in an isolated religious community." The woman was admitted to the psychiatric unit for observation and stabilization. For the first 48 hours, she remained largely catatonic, occasionally muttering the same phrases paramedics had documented. On June 16th at 10 a.m., a forensic psychiatrist named Dr. Laura Martinez began attempting to establish the woman's identity. When shown a series of photographs of missing persons from the region, the woman showed no reaction until Dr. Martinez presented a photo of Melissa Carter from 2007. The woman's eyes widened and she began to cry silently, touching the photograph with trembling fingers. She whispered, "That was me before the elder found me." before I was Sister Hope. Fingerprint analysis using California missing persons databases was conducted on June 16, with results compared against records from Melissa Carter's driver's license application with the Arizona DMV. The fingerprints matched with absolute certainty at 3 p.m. on June 16. DNA analysis using a reference sample from Patricia Carter, provided via the Tucson Police Department, confirmed identity with 99.9% certainty on June 17. Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department contacted Patricia Carter at 5 p.m. on June 17. Detective Marcus Reynolds, assigned to the case, made the call personally. Patricia Carter later described the conversation as impossible to comprehend, like reality had broken. Marcus kept saying Melissa was alive, but I'd buried my daughter emotionally 7 years ago. Part of me thought it was a cruel hoax. Patricia Carter arrived at the hospital at 11 a.m. on June 18, having taken a red-eye flight from Tucson. Kyle Morrison, who had stayed in touch with Patricia over the years, drove up from Phoenix and arrived at 2:15 p.m. The reunion, conducted under close supervision of hospital psychiatric staff, lasted only 30 minutes. Melissa recognized her mother but seemed unable to fully accept her presence as real. She kept touching Patricia's hand, saying, "You age so much." "Did I age you?" The elder said time moved differently in the deceived world, and we were living in God's eternal now. Patricia Carter told investigators, "She looked at me like I was familiar but distant, like seeing someone from a half-remembered dream. My daughter was in that room, but someone else had been living in her body for 7 years." Kyle Morrison's reunion with Melissa was even more difficult. She looked at him with no recognition whatsoever, asking Dr. Martinez, "Who is this man? Why is he crying?" Kyle later stated to investigators, "The woman I knew was gone completely. She didn't remember our relationship, our plans, anything. The elder had erased me from her mind." Over the following 2 weeks, as Melissa's physical condition gradually stabilized, psychiatric evaluation revealed the extent of her trauma and the depth of her indoctrination. Dr. Laura Martinez, specializing in cult recovery and trauma psychology, conducted daily sessions. Melissa's early testimonies were fragmented, contradictory, and heavily influenced by the belief system that had been imposed on her during 7 years of captivity. She repeatedly referred to the elder with a mixture of fear and reverence, described the community and the sacred work we performed for God's glory. On June 23rd, Melissa provided the first coherent account of what happened after her last known sighting at Barker Dam. She stated that on the afternoon of March 22, 2007, after completing the Barker Dam Loop Trail, she noticed a rocky area that looked interesting for photographs. She walked off trail, following what appeared to be a faint path through the Joshua trees and rock formations. Within 20 minutes, Melissa realized she was lost. The landscape all looked the same, and she couldn't see the parking area or any landmarks she recognized. Her cell phone showed no signal. She attempted to retrace her steps, but became increasingly disoriented in the maze of rocks and desert vegetation. She stated, "I kept thinking I'd recognize something, but everything looked identical. I walked for what felt like hours, getting more and more panicked." At approximately 3:30 p.m., exhausted and frightened, Melissa encountered a man she described as tall, maybe 60 years old, with a long gray beard and piercing blue eyes. He wore plain dark clothing and a wide-brimmed black hat. He appeared suddenly from behind a rock formation. He told Melissa he was an elder from a nearby religious community and that she was heading in the wrong direction, farther from the parking area. He said his community's property was nearby and she could rest there, drink water, and he would drive her back to the trailhead before sunset. Melissa, desperate and alone in unfamiliar terrain, accepted his offer without hesitation. She stated, "He seemed kind and concerned. He spoke about God watching over lost sheep. I trusted him completely." The man led Melissa through increasingly remote terrain for what she estimated was 2 hours, though her sense of time was distorted by stress and heat. They walked through areas with no trails, climbing over rock formations and navigating through dense stands of Joshua trees. Melissa realized they were moving farther from any developed area, but the man assured her this was a shortcut, When Melissa questioned how much farther, the man's demeanor changed subtly. He told her, "You were sent to us for a reason. God has plans for you. You will serve the community and find salvation." Melissa attempted to turn back, but the man grabbed her arm forcefully. She tried to pull away and he struck her across the face, knocking her to the ground. Melissa's account of the next hours was fragmented. She remembered being dragged, sometimes carried, through the desert as darkness fell. She lost consciousness at some point, possibly from dehydration, fear, and the blow to her head. When Melissa regained awareness, she was in a compound that would become her prison for the next 7 years. The compound consisted of multiple buildings arranged around a central courtyard, constructed from adobe, wood, and corrugated metal. The architecture resembled simplified Amish or Mennonite construction, but with modifications suggesting isolation and self-sufficiency. Solar panels provided limited electricity. A windmill pumped water from a well. Extensive gardens surrounded the buildings. The entire compound was surrounded by desert on all sides, with no visible roads or neighboring structures. Melissa later learned the compound was located approximately 25 miles from the nearest paved road, accessible only by a network of unmarked dirt tracks that were deliberately maintained in poor condition to discourage outsiders. The compound housed approximately 15 people when Melissa arrived in March 2007. The leader, whom everyone called the Elder, was the man who had captured Melissa. His real name was never used in the community. He presented himself as a prophet who had received divine visions, commanding him to establish a purified community separate from the corrupted modern world. The community members consisted of individuals of varying ages and backgrounds, though Melissa would learn that most had been recruited through deception or coercion, similar to her own experience. Some had been with the Elder for over a decade. The community's ideology was a distorted mixture of fundamentalist Christianity, Old Order Amish practices, and apocalyptic survivalism. The Elder preached that the outside world was controlled by Satan, that technology was evil, that women must submit completely to male authority, and that suffering and deprivation were paths to spiritual purification. He claimed to receive direct revelations from God and interpreted these visions as commands for the community. Daily life in the compound was brutally regimented. Members woke before dawn for prayer sessions that lasted 2 hours. Breakfast consisted of minimal portions of bread, oatmeal, or gruel. Women spent the day performing manual labor, tending gardens, sewing clothing, cooking, cleaning, and constructing additional buildings. Men worked in the fields, maintained equipment, and performed tasks the Elder designated. Lunch was often skipped entirely or consisted of water and small portions of vegetables. Dinner was the main meal, but portions remained minimal, barely sufficient to sustain life given the physical labor demanded. All meals were preceded by lengthy prayers and sermons from the Elder. The Elder maintained absolute control through a combination of religious indoctrination, physical intimidation, isolation, and strategic violence. He preached that obedience to his commands was obedience to God, and that questioning his authority was questioning God. He used public punishments to maintain fear. Members who violated rules were whipped, placed in isolation, or deprived of food. He convinced members that their families had forgotten them, that the outside world had moved on, and that attempting to leave would result in death either from the desert or from God's wrath. He controlled all information, forbidding any discussion of life before the community or any expression of desire to return to the corrupted world. Melissa was renamed Sister Hope and told her previous identity was a deception from her life in sin. The Elder assigned an older woman named Sister Mercy to indoctrinate Melissa and the community's beliefs and practices. Sister Mercy, approximately 50 years old, had been with the Elder for 12 years. She showed Melissa how to dress in the plain clothing required for women, how to pray in the manner the Elder demanded, and how to work without complaint. Sister Mercy explained that resistance was futile and would only bring suffering. She said, "I fought for the first year. It nearly killed me. Now I understand this is God's plan. You will understand too eventually." Melissa attempted to escape 5 times during her first 6 months. The first attempt occurred in April 2007 when she tried to slip away during garden work. She ran into the desert but became lost within an hour, with no water and no sense of direction. The elders' men tracked her easily and brought her back. She was whipped in front of the assembled community and placed in an isolation cell, a small shed with no windows, for 3 days with no food. Subsequent escape attempts in May, June, July, and August all failed similarly. The desert was vast and disorienting. The men knew the terrain perfectly, and Melissa's physical condition was deteriorating from malnutrition and overwork. Each recapture brought harsher punishments, extended isolation, public beatings, burns inflicted with hot metal implements as purification of rebellious thoughts. By September 2007, Melissa had stopped attempting escape. She later testified, "I accepted that I would die there. I stopped being Melissa and became Sister Hope. It was the only way to survive." Melissa's transformation from resistant captive to compliant community member was gradual and devastating. By early 2008, she was participating in the daily routines without resistance. By late 2008, she was repeating the elders' teachings, praying without prompting, and even helping to indoctrinate newer members. She had adopted the community's worldview as a psychological defense mechanism, a way to make sense of her situation and reduce the cognitive dissonance between her imprisonment and her need to survive. Dr. Martinez later explained, "Melissa wasn't weak or stupid for accepting the indoctrination. She was demonstrating remarkable psychological resilience. When escape is impossible and resistance brings torture, the mind adapts by accepting the captor's reality. It's a survival mechanism, not a character flaw." The community's primary activity, beyond subsistence farming and daily survival, was construction of what the elder called the Temple of the Purified. This structure, located at the center of the compound, was to be a massive building constructed entirely from materials harvested or scavenged from the desert: adobe bricks, timber cut from distant areas, stones carried by hand. The elder claimed God had shown him detailed plans for the temple, and that its completion would signal the beginning of the end times and the salvation of the faithful. Members spent years hauling materials, mixing adobe, shaping bricks, and assembling the structure under the elder's obsessive supervision. The work was back-breaking, dangerous, and seemed endless. Melissa spent thousands of hours carrying heavy loads of materials, working in extreme heat with minimal water, and constructing a building that represented her own captivity. The physical toll on Melissa was severe. By 2009, she had lost approximately 30 pounds from her already slight frame. Her hands bore permanent scars from handling rough materials and tools. Her feet developed thick calluses and deformities from walking barefoot, as the elder required during purification work. She sustained multiple injuries, including broken fingers that healed improperly, burns, cuts, and chronic malnutrition symptoms. Most devastating was the death of members Melissa had grown close to during captivity. In winter 2009, a woman known as Sister Ruth, approximately 35 years old, became seriously ill with what appeared to be pneumonia. The elder refused to allow any medical intervention, stating that illness was a test of faith. Sister Ruth died in January 2010 after 2 weeks of suffering. Melissa and other women prepared Ruth's body for burial in a crude cemetery behind the compound. The elder conducted a brief ceremony claiming Ruth had achieved purification through her death. Melissa later testified, "Ruth's death was when I truly understood I might never leave. We buried her like she'd never existed, like her life before the community meant nothing. I realized the same thing would happen to me." 2 other deaths occurred during Melissa's captivity that she was aware of. A man known as Brother James died in summer 2011 from what appeared to be a heat stroke while working in the fields. A younger woman known as Sister Grace disappeared in fall 2012, and the elder claimed she had been taken up by God, though other members whispered that she had been punished for attempting to escape and had died from the punishment. By 2013, Melissa had largely surrendered her previous identity. She thought of herself as Sister Hope. She believed the elder's teachings were mostly correct, though some small part of her mind retained doubt. She participated in the community's rituals without resistance. She had accepted that she would likely die there. She described this period in testimony as not really living, just existing, going through motions without thought or feeling. The change that eventually led to Melissa's freedom began in late 2013, when the elder's health started deteriorating. He was approximately 68 years old and had been showing signs of illness for months: severe coughing, weight loss, confusion. By early 2014, the elder was bedridden much of the time, though he still conducted prayers and gave commands from his bed. The community's dynamics shifted as the elder's control weakened. A man known as Brother Samuel, approximately 45 years old, had been the elder's second in command for over a decade. As the elder weakened, Brother Samuel began making more decisions and asserting more authority. Some community members welcomed this. Others, particularly those who had been with the elder longest, resisted. On May 23, 2014, the elder died in his sleep. His death threw the community into chaos. Brother Samuel immediately declared himself the new leader, claiming the elder had designated him as successor. Other senior members disputed this, claiming they should lead collectively. Arguments erupted, some turning violent. Within a week, the community had fractured into two factions. Brother Samuel's faction, consisting of about 8 people including several men, controlled the main buildings and the food stores. The opposing faction, about 7 people including Melissa, retreated to the outbuildings and began discussing leaving the compound entirely. For the first time in 7 years, Melissa heard people openly discussing returning to the outside world. A woman named Sister Charity, approximately 40 years old, had been with the elder for 15 years. She told the group, "The elder is dead. His authority is gone. Samuel has no divine mandate. We can leave. We should leave." But leaving was terrifying for everyone involved. They had been isolated for years, had been told repeatedly that the outside world was evil and dangerous, and had lost confidence in their ability to function in normal society. Several members, including Melissa, were afraid to leave. Sister Charity spent days convincing them, explaining that they could seek help, that their families might still be looking for them, that they deserved freedom. On June 2, 2014, 4 members of the opposing faction decided to leave: Sister Charity, Sister Hope, Melissa, a younger man known as Brother David, and an older man known as Brother Thomas. They gathered minimal supplies, some food, water containers, a few tools, and the plain clothing they wore. They left at dawn while Brother Samuel's faction was still sleeping, walking away from the compound in the direction Sister Charity believed would lead to a road. The journey through the desert was nightmarish. None of them had compasses or maps. They walked for days, rationing water carefully, surviving on minimal food. Brother Thomas, approximately 60 years old and in poor health, collapsed on the 3rd day. The group tried to help him, but he died on June 5th, likely from dehydration and exhaustion combined with underlying health conditions. They buried him in a shallow grave marked with rocks. On June 7th, Brother David disappeared during the night. When the others woke, he was gone, along with most of their remaining water. Sister Charity believed David had panicked and struck out on his own. They searched for several hours but found no trace of him. Melissa and Sister Charity continued alone for 5 more days, walking during early morning and evening, resting during the intense midday heat. By June 12th, they were nearly out of water and severely dehydrated. On June 13th, they saw a paved road in the distance. They reached the road that afternoon, Highway 14, in the Antelope Valley region. They walked along the road for approximately 3 hours before Sister Charity collapsed from exhaustion. Melissa tried to help her, but Charity was unresponsive. Melissa sat beside her, not knowing what to do. A car finally stopped at approximately 4:00 p.m. The driver, a rancher named Robert Torres, immediately called for emergency services. An ambulance arrived 20 minutes later, but Sister Charity was declared dead at the scene from severe dehydration and exposure. Melissa was transported to Antelope Valley Hospital, but was released after brief treatment because she appeared stable. However, Melissa was in a state of profound dissociation and trauma. The medical staff, not recognizing she was a long-term captivity victim, released her with instructions to seek follow-up care. Melissa walked away from the hospital in a daze, still wearing the plain Mennonite-style dress someone had given her at the hospital to replace her desert-damaged clothing. She walked for hours through Lancaster, not knowing where to go or what to do. She eventually arrived at Miller's General Store, where Jennifer Walsh found her the next day, June 14, 2014. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department reopened the investigation into Melissa Carter's disappearance immediately upon her identification on June 17, 2014. Detective Marcus Reynolds led a team of 12 investigators, supported by FBI specialists in kidnapping and cult-related crimes. Melissa's testimonies, provided over multiple sessions as her psychological state allowed, provided crucial information about the compound's location. She described the journey from Joshua Tree, the compound's appearance, the surrounding terrain, and the escape route she and the others had taken. On June 25, 2014, investigators began searching for the compound, using Melissa's descriptions and analyzing satellite imagery of remote areas in the Mojave Desert between Joshua Tree and Lancaster. The compound was located on June 30, 2014, at 10:30 a.m. by a combined team of FBI agents and sheriff's deputies using helicopters and GPS coordinates. The location was approximately 28 miles northeast of Joshua Tree National Park, on private land that records showed had been purchased in 1998 by a man named David Eugene Fletcher. The compound matched Melissa's description exactly. Multiple adobe and wood structures, solar panels, windmill, extensive gardens, and the partially completed Temple of the Purified at the center. The compound was deserted when investigators arrived. Evidence suggested the remaining community members had abandoned the site recently, possibly within days of the elder's death. The site showed clear evidence of long-term habitation spanning approximately 15 years. FBI forensic teams documented everything methodically over a period of 2 weeks. They found crude living quarters with minimal furnishings, storage areas containing food supplies and tools, a rudimentary medical area with basic first aid supplies, and the worship area where the elder had conducted prayers and sermons. Most significantly, investigators found the elder's journals and writings. David Fletcher had maintained detailed records spanning from 1999 to early 2014, documenting the establishment of the compound, the recruitment of members, the community's daily activities, and disturbing passages about purification through suffering and bringing lost souls to salvation. The journals included lists of members referred to only by their community names like Sister Hope, Brother Samuel, and so on. Entries described punishments, described the temple construction project, and revealed Fletcher's increasingly delusional belief that he was a prophet preparing for the apocalypse. On July 3, 2014, following information from Fletcher's journals and Melissa's testimony about burial locations, investigators excavated the cemetery area behind the compound. They discovered 4 graves containing human remains. Forensic analysis identified the remains as belonging to 3 women and 1 man, all deceased between 2009 and 2013. One set of remains was identified through dental records as belonging to Samantha Ruth Williams, a woman from Nevada who had been reported missing in 2008 while on a road trip. The other 3 individuals could not be immediately identified, but all showed evidence of malnutrition, untreated medical conditions, and causes of death consistent with disease and deprivation rather than acute violence. Investigators also located the grave of Brother Thomas, approximately 6 miles from the compound, matching the location Melissa had described from the escape journey. The remains were identified as belonging to Thomas Michael Patterson, a man from Oregon who had been reported missing in 2002 while traveling through California. Despite intensive searches of the surrounding desert areas in July and August 2014, no trace of Brother David was found. His identity remained unknown and his fate was listed as missing and presumed deceased. The FBI issued a nationwide alert for David Eugene Fletcher, described as approximately 68 years old, though investigators initially believed Fletcher had died in May 2014. However, examination of the compound revealed that Fletcher's body was not among those buried in the cemetery. Investigators theorized that Brother Samuel's faction had removed Fletcher's body when they abandoned the compound. The search for former community members, particularly Brother Samuel and the others who had left the compound, intensified through July and August 2014. Investigators circulated descriptions based on Melissa's accounts and analyzed Fletcher's journals for possible real identities. On August 14, 2014, a man matching the description of Brother Samuel was arrested during a traffic stop in rural Nevada. He identified himself as Samuel Robert Morrison, age 47, from Utah. Morrison initially denied any connection to the compound, but eventually confessed when presented with evidence from Fletcher's journals and Melissa's testimony. Morrison stated that after Fletcher died, he and 7 other community members had abandoned the compound, taking Fletcher's body with them. They buried Fletcher in an undisclosed location in the desert and scattered, with Morrison claiming he had no knowledge of where the others went. Morrison was charged with multiple counts of kidnapping, false imprisonment, and conspiracy. He cooperated with investigators, providing information about Fletcher's recruitment methods and the compound's operations. Morrison led investigators to Fletcher's burial site on August 20, 2014. The remains were confirmed through DNA analysis as belonging to David Eugene Fletcher. Background investigation revealed Fletcher had been a successful real estate developer in California in the 1980s and early 1990s. He had become involved in fundamentalist religious groups in the mid-1990s, growing increasingly extreme in his beliefs. He had purchased the remote desert property in 1998 and established the compound around 1999. He had initially recruited members through religious gatherings and by offering shelter to homeless individuals, but by the early 2000s had shifted to opportunistic kidnapping of lost or vulnerable people. Over approximately 15 years, investigators determined Fletcher had held at least 23 people captive at various times. Some had escaped, some had died, and some had remained until the compound's collapse in 2014. Between August and December 2014, investigators identified 7 former community members who had been with Brother Samuel's faction when they abandoned the compound. 4 were located and arrested in different states, charged with varying degrees of complicity in the kidnappings and false imprisonment. 3 remained missing and were listed as fugitives. The legal proceedings were complex and extended over 18 months. Samuel Morrison was tried in federal court in Los Angeles beginning in March 2015. Melissa Carter testified in May 2015, providing detailed accounts of her captivity, the conditions at the compound, Fletcher's control methods, and Morrison's role as enforcer. Morrison was convicted on August 12, 2015, of multiple counts of kidnapping, false imprisonment, and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 45 years in federal prison on October 3, 2015. 3 other former community members accepted plea agreements, receiving sentences ranging from 10 to 20 years in exchange for their cooperation with ongoing investigations. The legal outcome left Melissa with mixed feelings. She stated in a victim impact statement, "Morrison and the others will be punished, but the elder is dead and escaped justice. The people who died at the compound will never see justice, and I'll never get back 7 years of my life." Melissa Carter's recovery process began in June 2014 and continues to the present day. Her treatment has been coordinated by Dr. Laura Martinez and a team of specialists at a private psychiatric facility in Southern California, where Melissa spent the first 10 months in intensive inpatient treatment. Her diagnoses include severe post-traumatic stress disorder, complex dissociative disorder, major depressive disorder, and what Dr. Martinez described as cult indoctrination syndrome, a specific pattern of psychological damage resulting from prolonged exposure to coercive religious environments. The early months focused on basic stabilization, establishing that she was safe, rebuilding trust in others, and beginning to process the trauma. Melissa struggled with severe symptoms. She experienced flashbacks where she believed she was still at the compound, nightmares of the elder, and punishments, panic attacks when in enclosed spaces, and difficulty accepting that she was actually free. By mid-2015, Melissa had made sufficient progress to transition to outpatient treatment and begin rebuilding her relationship with her mother. The relationship was difficult for both women. Patricia had grieved her daughter for 7 years and now faced a stranger who looked like Melissa but had been profoundly changed. Melissa struggled to connect with Patricia emotionally, often reverting to behaviors learned during captivity, such as asking permission before eating or speaking. Patricia later described the process as learning to know a new person who shares some memories with my daughter, but is fundamentally different. Kyle Morrison attempted to reconnect with Melissa in late 2015, but the relationship could not be resumed. Melissa had no memory of their relationship and found the idea of romantic involvement overwhelming. Kyle eventually accepted this and stepped back, though he remained supportive from a distance. By 2016, Melissa had made significant progress. She completed a vocational rehabilitation program, began working part-time at a non-profit organization helping cult survivors, and moved into a supervised apartment with regular visits from mental health professionals. However, she continued to struggle with symptoms of trauma that will likely persist throughout her life. As of late 2016, Melissa remains in treatment and has not returned to independent living in Phoenix. She has not been able to resume a marketing career and avoids social situations that feel overwhelming. She maintains contact with her mother, but the relationship is strained by years of separation and psychological damage. In a written statement released through her attorney in November 2016, Melissa addressed public interest. People want to know how I survived 7 years of captivity, how I'm doing now, whether I've recovered. The truth is that I survived by becoming someone else, and now I'm struggling to become myself again. Recovery isn't a straight line. Some days I'm okay, some days I'm not. I'm grateful to be alive and free, but I'm also mourning the person I was and the 7 years I lost. The Melissa Carter case resulted in significant changes to search and rescue protocols in Joshua Tree National Park and surrounding areas. In December 2014, the National Park Service implemented enhanced visitor tracking systems for day hikers, including mandatory sign-out procedures and check-in stations at multiple points along popular trails. Park rangers now conduct more frequent patrols of areas where visitors commonly leave marked trails. In 2015, the California legislature passed Melissa's Law, requiring law enforcement to maintain active investigations of missing persons cases for minimum periods, and to coordinate with federal agencies when investigating suspected cult-related crimes. The law also allocated funding for specialized training for investigators working on cult recovery cases. The investigation into other potential victims of David Fletcher continued through 2015 and 2016. Investigators identified at least 8 additional people who had been reported missing in California, Nevada, and Arizona between 2000 and 2014 who might have been held at Fletcher's compound. 2 were eventually located alive, having escaped from the compound years earlier, but never reported their captivity due to fear and trauma. The fate of Sister Charity, who died from exposure during the escape, haunted Melissa. Charity's real identity was eventually established as Charlotte Marie Stevens, a woman from Colorado who had been reported missing in 2001. Her remains were returned to her family in Colorado for burial in April 2015. Brother David was never found, and his identity remains unknown as of late 2016. The 4 unidentified individuals buried at the compound remained unidentified despite extensive efforts, their names known only as Sister Grace, Brother James, and 2 others Fletcher had referred to in his journals only by numbers. The Fletcher compound was demolished by federal authorities in September 2015, with all structures removed and the site declared a hazmat area due to contaminated soil and water. The land was seized through federal asset forfeiture and eventually transferred to the Bureau of Land Management. Patricia Carter established the Melissa Carter Foundation in January 2016, dedicated to supporting survivors of cult captivity and funding research into recovery methods. The foundation has provided assistance to the 2 other Fletcher victims who came forward and supports ongoing efforts to identify missing persons who may have been cult victims. The case raised disturbing questions about how many other isolated compounds might exist in America's vast desert and wilderness areas, housing captives whose families believe them dead. Melissa Carter's case demonstrated that such situations are not relics of the past but ongoing threats, particularly in remote regions where someone with resources, determination, and willingness to exploit vulnerable people can operate undetected for years. The psychological cost of Melissa's survival remains immeasurable. She lives with permanent physical disabilities from poorly healed fractures and malnutrition effects, with severe dental problems requiring extensive ongoing treatment, and with psychological trauma that manifests daily. As of late 2016, she continues therapy and medication management and may never achieve complete independence. The case continues to generate questions without satisfying answers. How many people did Fletcher kidnap before establishing the compound in 1999? Were there earlier compounds or locations he used? How many of the missing former community members were victims versus willing participants? What happened to the 3 fugitives who fled when the compound was abandoned? The investigation remains technically open for these questions, though active searching has been suspended. Melissa Carter's story became a focal point for discussions about cult awareness, the vulnerability of people in isolated areas, and the long-term effects of captivity. Her case was covered extensively in media through 2015 and 2016, though Melissa herself has declined all interview requests. The families of the unidentified victims buried at the compound continue to hope their loved ones will someday be identified through DNA databases and advancing forensic technology. Charlotte Stevens' family has become advocates for missing persons awareness, speaking at conferences and supporting other families. Thomas Patterson's family received closure after 12 years of uncertainty and held a memorial service in Oregon in 2015. Samantha Williams' family, after 6 years of searching, finally laid her to rest in Nevada in 2014. A small memorial was placed at the Barker Dam trailhead in Joshua Tree National Park, where Melissa Carter began her hike on March 22, 2007. The plaque reads, "In memory of those lost to human predators disguised as helpers, remain vigilant, trust your instincts." By late 2016, Melissa Carter was learning to navigate a world that had changed dramatically during her 7-year absence. Technology had advanced, with smartphones becoming ubiquitous, social media transforming communication, and the entire digital landscape shifting. Friends from her previous life had moved on, married, started careers, and built lives without her. Her previous career aspirations in marketing seemed impossibly distant from her current reality. She struggles with modern technology, finds crowded places overwhelming, and prefers quiet isolation despite knowing isolation can be dangerous. In her most recent statement to investigators, recorded in October 2016, Melissa said, "People ask if I'm glad I escaped. Of course I am. But the woman who was Melissa Carter died in that desert in 2007. I'm someone else now, someone built from pieces of Melissa and pieces of Sister Hope and pieces I'm still discovering. I survived captivity, but now I'm learning to survive freedom, which is harder than anyone who hasn't experienced this could understand." The Mojave Desert continues to attract thousands of visitors annually, drawn by its stark beauty, unique ecosystems, and opportunities for solitude and reflection. Most visitors experience its wonders and return home safely with photographs and memories. But Melissa Carter's story serves as a reminder that danger in wilderness areas comes not only from natural hazards like heat, dehydration, and getting lost, but from human predators who exploit vulnerability and isolation. David Fletcher operated his compound for 15 years, less than 30 miles from one of California's most popular national parks, holding dozens of people captive, and remained undetected until his own death triggered the compound's collapse. His ability to kidnap, imprison, and psychologically destroy people while living in the open desert, purchasing supplies from nearby towns, and maintaining a property with utility connections, reveals profound gaps in society's ability to identify and rescue victims of long-term captivity. 3 people who escaped Fletcher's compound died during their escape: Charlotte Stevens from exposure, Thomas Patterson from exhaustion and dehydration, and an unknown man who remains unidentified. At least 4 people died during captivity whose identities may never be known. 1 person survived who will carry 7 years of trauma forever: Melissa Carter. And somewhere, questions remain about the 3 fugitives who fled the compound in 2014, about Brother David who disappeared in the desert, about whether Fletcher had other properties or compounds before the one discovered, about how many families still wonder what happened to someone who simply never came home. The desert keeps its secrets well, vast enough to swallow entire lives, harsh enough to erase evidence, empty enough that screams go unheard. Melissa Carter's escape and survival broke the seal on one compound's secrets, but the questions it raises about other possible victims, other possible compounds, other predators operating in isolated areas remain open and troubling. Some questions will never be fully answered, and some losses can never be recovered, even when the missing are found. Melissa Carter was 22 years old when she disappeared on a simple day hike, 29 when she was found, having spent 7 years in captivity, and she will spend the rest of her life learning to be free again.